My friend Sam had warned me about his sister in that half-serious, half-don't-test-me way guys do. Just don't get pulled in, he'd said, tying his shoelaces before we left campus. She's complicated. And her girlfriend? Even worse. I laughed it off. I wasn't planning to meet either of them. I didn't even know their names. Funny how warnings land only after they matter. Most mornings, I stopped by Harlan Street Coffee, a small place tucked between a pharmacy and a closed-down florist. I liked it because the lights were soft, the music was always about 20 years behind, and nobody tried to talk to you unless you wanted them to. That morning, the door chimed behind me, and the warmth of the cafe washed over my ears. My headphones were around my neck, not on. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to hear the world instead of escape it for once. She was at the counter. I didn't know she was Sam's sister then. I only knew her as the woman who sometimes got there before me, the one who wore a gray sweater that made her look like she carried her own weather. Mid-40s, maybe older, but she moved in this unhurried way, like someone who'd learned not to rush for anything that didn't rush back. She glanced at me when I walked in, a small, polite acknowledgement, and then returned to stirring her coffee. Slowly, like she was thinking through something, and the spoon helped. I joined the line behind her. "You're the cold brew guy," she said without turning. Her voice was warm, but scratched at the edges. I blinked. "Oh yeah? Guess I'm predictable." "I like predictable," she said, finally glancing over. Just a second. Just long enough for her eyes to land on mine, and then flick toward my hands, where I was unconsciously folding the edge of a napkin I'd picked up. "It means you know what you want." I smiled a little late. "Or I'm boring." "Maybe," she said, the corner of her mouth lifting. "But the kind of boring people trust." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. She didn't fill the silence either. That told me more about her than anything else. When she got her drink, she stepped aside instead of leaving. Just stood by the window, blowing lightly on the lid. Not really needing it to cool. More like it was a habit. I ordered my usual, trying not to look like I was looking at her. As I waited, I opened my phone. A half-written text sat in the message box, something I'd meant to send last night to nobody in particular. Just words I typed and deleted and typed again. I locked the screen before the barista could notice. When I picked up my drink, she spoke again. "You headed to class?" "Not today." I lifted the cup slightly. Just needed caffeine before doing nothing. "That's a valid plan." Her smile was small but real. "I'm Nora, by the way." I didn't have time to react to the name before the cafe door opened behind us and another woman walked in. Sharp posture, dark jacket, hair pinned back with deliberate precision. She saw Nora, and something like warmth broke across her face. She walked straight to her, kissed her cheek, and murmured something that made Nora's shoulders relax. I stepped aside, pretending to scroll my phone. Nora glanced over the woman's shoulder at me. Quick, almost apologetic, then gone. I started toward the door just as my phone buzzed. A text from Sam. "Forgot to tell you, my sister's back in town. Don't be weird if you run into her. And don't flirt. Her girlfriend's territorial." I froze, thumb hovering. Through the window, Nora glanced at me again. Not long, just an echo of a look. And for some reason I couldn't name, I didn't push the door open. Something about the moment held me in place, like the air between us had shifted, just slightly, in a way I didn't yet understand. I didn't see Nora again for 3 days. I told myself that was normal. People have lives, routines, mornings that don't line up. Still, every time I passed Harlan Street Coffee, my eyes flicked through the window before my mind could stop them. On the 4th morning, she was there. Alone this time. She sat at the small table in the corner, the one with the wobbly leg and the chipped paint. I took the seat across the room, pretending I hadn't noticed her, pretending even harder that I wasn't hoping she'd notice me. She did. Not immediately, but eventually, she looked up from the book she wasn't really reading and offered a quiet smile. Not the kind you give a stranger, and not exactly the kind you give a friend. Something in between. Something unsafe. I nodded back. For a while, that was all. Just the sound of cups being rinsed, a kid laughing too loudly near the door, the low hum of the fridge behind the counter. Then Nora closed her book and walked over. She tapped the chair across from me. "Anyone sitting here?" I shook my head, trying not to sit up straighter than a normal human would. She sat, folding her hands around her cup like she was trying to warm more than her fingers. "Rough week?" she asked. "You can tell. You're stirring your drink clockwise. You only do that when you're overthinking something." I blinked. "You've seen me do that before?" "Twice," she said, almost embarrassed. "I notice small things. It's a bad habit." "It's not bad," I said. "Just specific." She laughed softly, and the tension in her shoulders eased. For a moment, she looked younger, not in age, but in burden. "My girlfriend's been out of town," she said, tracing her thumb along the cardboard sleeve. "She's usually the one who reminds me not to take on other people's storms." "Do I look stormy?" "A little." She smiled. "But that's okay. I used to like storms." Something flicked in her expression, nostalgia, maybe, or regret. I couldn't tell, and I didn't dare ask. Instead, she asked me, "What about you? What's been on your mind?" 1,000 non-answers rushed forward. Homework, work, sleep, lies that would slide off the table between us. What came out surprised even me. "I kept thinking about the other morning," I said. "I don't know why. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me." I didn't mean it to sound that honest. Her eyes softened anyway. She nodded slowly, not smiling, just holding my gaze like the moment deserved stillness. "I get that," she murmured. "More than you'd think." We sat there in silence. Not awkward, not exactly. More like two people standing on opposite edges of something they shouldn't be measuring. After a while, she reached for the sugar packets in the center of the table. Her hand brushed mine. Barely. A soft, accidental touch that wasn't really an accident. She didn't pull her hand back immediately. And neither did I. She finally spoke. Quiet. Almost too quiet. "Just don't tell Sam you sit here. He'll think I'm corrupting you." I laughed, more breath than sound, and she looked up at me with a gaze that held just a second too long. A gesture small enough to ignore. A moment heavy enough not to. After that morning, the almost touch, something shifted. Subtle but real. A change in temperature you only notice when you step outside. Nora wasn't at the cafe the next day, or the one after. By the third morning, I told myself it didn't matter, that adults have things to do, people to return to. But my eyes kept drifting toward the corner table, the one with the chipped paint, as if it might fill itself by wanting it enough. On the fourth morning, she finally walked in. Except she didn't look at me. Not even once. She ordered her drink, shoulders a little too straight, nodding stiffly at the barista like she was performing the role of someone unbothered. I watched the way her fingers tapped against her sleeve. A nervous rhythm, not her usual calm. She almost left, she really did. But then her eyes flicked toward me. Just once. Quick. Guilty, like she'd been avoiding it on purpose. She hesitated, then walked over. "Sorry," she said, standing instead of sitting. "This week's been complicated." I nodded. "You don't owe me an explanation." "I know." She twisted her cup lid. "That's kind of the problem." I didn't know what that meant, but the way she said it, soft, restrained, almost afraid of itself, told me something was wrong. Or maybe too right. Before I could ask, the door chimed again. Sam walked in. Perfect timing. His eyes landed on us instantly. "Oh, hey, you two know each other." Nora's shoulders lifted an inch. Barely, but I saw it. "Just coffee," she said quickly. Too quickly. Sam turned to me, eyebrows narrowing like he was trying to connect dots he didn't want to find. "She's trouble," he said lightly. "Told you that." Nora attempted a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I should go." She brushed past him, hand briefly touching his arm. Sisterly, normal, but her other hand brushed mine as she passed. Barely there. Just a whisper of warmth. Enough to ruin my ability to think. Sam watched her leave, then looked at me. "What was that?" I shrugged badly. "Nothing." She just said hi. He studied me a moment too long, but fortunately didn't push. Instead, he ordered his drink, talking about a class project while my thoughts sprinted ahead, all tangled and restless. When he left, I stayed. And a minute later, Nora slipped back inside. She moved straight to the corner table, sat down, and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath outside. She looked at me, not beckoning, but not pushing me away either. I walked over. "You didn't have to come back," I said. "I know." Her voice was quieter now, but I didn't want the last thing between us to be that. She traced circles on the table with her fingertip. "My girlfriend's back tonight," she murmured. "And she notices everything. Everything." A pause. "So, I need to be careful." Careful of what? The question escaped before I could stop it. She lifted her eyes to mine. "You," she said. Soft. Tired. Honest in a way she probably regretted immediately. Silence stretched. Not tense, just suspended. Like a breath neither of us was ready to release. She leaned in, barely a few inches. Not a kiss, not even close. Just close enough that I felt her exhale warm against my cheek. "I shouldn't," she whispered. But she didn't pull back. Not yet. For a long second, we hovered there. Too near, too aware, both waiting for something neither of us said aloud. A near moment. A near confession. A line we both pretended wasn't there. We didn't talk again for a few days. Not because of avoidance, at least not mine. Nora simply disappeared into whatever life she had outside that cafe. I tried not to check every morning. Failed every time. Then one evening, just as the sun dipped low enough to turn the street orange, I saw her. She was standing outside her building, leaning against the railing like she'd been waiting for something, or trying to convince herself she wasn't. Her hair was pulled back loosely, a sign she'd had a long day or stopped caring midway through it. She saw me, didn't look away. "Taking a walk?" she asked. "Trying to," I said. "Didn't know where to go." "Same." She gestured down the sidewalk, and we started walking. No plan, just steps matching steps. For a while, neither of us spoke. The quiet felt like something stretched thin, not fragile, but held carefully. Nora kept brushing her thumb over her palm, a small restless movement she probably didn't realize she was doing. "You've been distant," I said finally. She exhaled. "I've been trying to be. Not working." "No," she said softly. "It's really not." We reached the small park at the end of the street, empty except for an old bench facing a patch of dry grass. She sat. I joined her, leaving just enough space to pretend it was intentional. Nora looked tired in a way that wasn't physical. "Things with your girlfriend?" I asked. She paused too long before answering. "She thinks I've been distracted." "Have you?" Her eyes found mine with an honesty that felt like a door unlocking. "Yes." Nothing dramatic. No sharp inhale. Just a single word dropped between us like a stone into still water. She pushed her hair behind her ear, a shaky gesture. She asked if I'm hiding something. I told her no. "And the thing is," she swallowed, "I wasn't lying yet. But I'm close. Too close." I didn't move. Didn't breathe for a second. "Nora, I know," she cut in. Not harsh. Just resigned. "I know how this looks. I know Sam would lose his mind. I know the age thing. The situation. But every time I try to step back, something pulls me forward again." Her voice cracked, just barely. The smallest fracture. "And it's not fair," she murmured, staring at her hands. "Not to her. Not to you. Not to me, even." I wanted to say something calming, something wise. Instead, the truth slipped out before I had time to dress it up. "I think about you too much." The second it left my mouth, her breath caught. Not loud. Just a soft intake that told me everything. She turned toward me slowly, like she was afraid sudden movement would break whatever was fragile between us. "That's the part that scares me," she whispered. "Because I don't want this." A long quiet. A pulse between us. Something unsteady, rising. Her knee brushed mine. A small, trembling contact. Not accidental this time. She leaned in, not fully, but close enough that the space between our faces warmed. "If we cross this line," she murmured, "there's no going back." Her words hung there, suspended, waiting. A question without being asked. An answer without being spoken. A moment right on the edge of breaking. The next morning, I expected some kind of fallout. A text, a cold look, maybe even Nora pretending yesterday never happened. I braced for it, rehearsed it in my head while brushing my teeth, walking down the stairs, pushing open the door of Harlan Street Coffee. But she wasn't there. Her usual table sat empty, chairs slightly pulled out like she'd left in a hurry years ago, and the place never recovered. I told myself she was just running late. Adults have schedules, responsibilities. But when the barista called my name, and I turned with that small, stupid hope still clinging to me, the seat was still empty. Day 2, empty. Day 3, still empty. Day 4, I didn't even go inside. I stood across the street like an idiot and stared at the door as if she might appear at any second. She didn't. The silence felt like someone had taped over the world. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. Then Sam messaged me. Heads up, Nora's going through stuff. Don't take anything personal. Stuff. A word that covers everything and means nothing. I typed, what kind of stuff? Then deleted it. Sam wasn't the person I wanted the answer from. That evening, walking home, I saw her. She was sitting on the stairs outside her building, elbows on her knees, hair messier than usual. A takeout bag rested beside her. She looked older, not in age, in weight, like she'd been carrying something with both hands for too long. She saw me, but she didn't smile. I walked over slowly, stopping a few steps below. Hey. Hey. Her voice was thin, almost brittle. You disappeared. I know. I waited. She didn't fill the silence. Finally, she rubbed her forehead and said, my ex called. Out of nowhere. She wants to talk. She stopped, choosing her words like they were fragile eggs. Closure. Or something like it. I felt something small and sharp twist in my chest. And my girlfriend, she added quietly, she's been picking up on things. She asked if I was unhappy. I didn't answer fast enough. So you pulled back. I had to. She glanced at me, not quite meeting my eyes. You're 20. You have your whole life expanding in front of you. I can't be the thing that collapses it. I didn't know what to say, and she didn't seem to want me to anyway. She looked down at her hands, fingers twisting together, a gesture too tight, too practiced. I don't know what I'm doing, she whispered. Everything's messy right now. And you're the last thing I should be reaching for. It wasn't rejection, but it wasn't anything else, either. A car honked somewhere down the street. She flinched, like sound had weight. Maybe it's better if we take some space, she said. Just until I figure things out. The words landed gently, but the air around them bruised. I nodded, even though every part of me wanted to shake my head. She stood, gathering her things. For a moment, she almost touched my arm, a tiny movement, aborted halfway. Instead, she whispered, take care, okay? Then walked up the stairs without looking back. I stood there until the streetlights hummed on. When I got home, I typed a message. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. I stared at it for a long time, then locked my phone. The message sat there, glowing softly. Unsent. A week passed. Then another. Life didn't fall apart. It just dimmed. Nora wasn't at the cafe, and I stopped pretending I wasn't checking. Sam mentioned she was figuring stuff out, but the way he said it told me he didn't know much either. I kept thinking about that unsent message, 5 small words hovering in a draft box like a held breath. One night, close to midnight, rain started tapping against my window. Light rain, the kind that doesn't sound like a storm, but like someone thinking out loud. I couldn't sleep, so I walked. No destination, just sidewalk and streetlight glow. Passing her building wasn't intentional. Stopping was. Her porch light was on. She was sitting on the top step, wrapped in a sweatshirt, hair damp from the mist. She looked up when I approached, surprised, but not startled. More like she'd been expecting someone and wasn't shocked it was me. You walk at midnight now? She asked softly. Only when I can't think straight. She nodded, eyes drifting to the wet pavement. Same. I climbed halfway up the steps, leaving a careful distance. Not too close. Not too far. She hugged her knees loosely, like her body couldn't decide whether to open up or close off. "I didn't mean to disappear," she said. "You don't owe me anything." "That's the problem," she murmured. "I feel like I do." The rain softened, shifting to mist. Between us, silence settled. Not cold, just heavy with everything unsaid. She exhaled, long and slow. "My ex wanted to talk about the past. My girlfriend wanted to talk about the future. And her voice thinned. I didn't want either. I waited." She kept her gaze fixed on the street, as if the truth was easier to say to moving cars. "You were in the middle," she said quietly. "And I kept pretending you weren't." My chest tightened. "Nora," she finally looked at me. Really looked. And I saw it. The exhaustion of someone pulled in too many directions, and the pull toward one she shouldn't want. "You confuse me," she said, in a way I didn't want to admit. I kept thinking if I stepped back, feelings would settle. But they didn't. They just got louder. Her hands trembled slightly, resting on her knees. She wasn't crying, but the vulnerability felt like standing at the edge of something with no railing. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she whispered. "Including you. Especially you." I swallowed. "Then just tell me what you want." Her breath caught, the smallest, sharpest sound of fear and relief colliding. "I don't know," she said. "I only know I don't want this to end in silence." She shifted closer, just an inch, but enough that I felt the warmth of her knee near mine. She didn't reach for me. Maybe she was afraid if she did, she'd pull too much. I reached out first. Not a bold gesture. Just my fingers brushing the back of her hand. Barely there. A question more than a touch. She looked down at our hands like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to lean into it. Then she did. Her fingers slipped between mine with a slow, unsure certainty. A connection small enough to undo me. "Okay," she whispered. Not a promise. Not a decision. Just a simple, human acceptance. A beginning disguised as a quiet word. Tom didn't fix things. It just softened the edges until they didn't cut anymore. Weeks passed after that night on her doorstep, the night they finally stopped pretending. Nothing dramatic happened after. No sudden confessions, no sweeping declarations, no fireworks. Just two people slowly choosing each other in the quiet ways that matter. He still arrived at the office around 8:47 a.m., pretending it wasn't on purpose. She still made tea the way she liked, too strong, too bitter, and pushed a cup of black coffee toward him without looking at him directly. But now, when their fingers brushed on the handoff, neither of them pulled away too quickly. Their routines didn't change, but the meanings inside them did. They found excuses to walk together after work. Not every day, just often enough that the absence on the missed days felt noticeable. Sometimes they talked about small, safe things. Terrible office jokes. The neighbor's cat who acted like it paid rent. The weather's refusal to make sense. Other times they walked in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't demand anything. The bench, their bench, became a kind of checkpoint. A place where the world felt paused, where the noise of everything else stayed a few steps behind. One late afternoon, after a long week, they sat there again. No drama, no tension, just the cool air settling around them and the faint buzz of distant traffic. She leaned her shoulder into his, gently, testing, then letting the weight settle there. He let out a small, almost embarrassed exhale, like he'd been holding it in for too long. "I'm glad you didn't give up," she said quietly. He didn't answer right away. Kitako moments rarely need speed, they need honesty. "I almost did," he admitted. "But then I realized, I don't want to go back to before." She looked at him then, really looked, not the careful side glances or guarded half-looks they'd spent months exchanging. Just a steady, warm gaze that felt like the truth finally had a place to sit. He didn't reach for her hand. She didn't lean in for anything more. They didn't need to. Instead, he smiled, a small, tired, honest smile. She mirrored it, softer, like an answer only he was meant to understand. Life didn't become perfect after that. They still had long days, missed calls, awkward miscommunications, and moments where old fears tried to crawl back in. But now they faced them together, even if quietly. Mornings were warmer. Evenings felt less empty. And their bench, the place where everything changed and nothing changed, remained a steady reminder of how far they'd come. In the end, their love wasn't loud. It was earned, one small choice at a time. And as they sat there one evening, sharing the fading light, she whispered something only he could hear. "Feels like we finally caught up to ourselves." Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?